Okay, so for the first one is subtraction. So we have to distribute. Whenever you see a subtraction sign, you have to start by distributing. So we're going to start by distributing that negative. So 4b squared, when you distribute that, it's going to become a negative 4b squared. And then the negative 2 becomes a positive 2. And I'm just putting it under its like term. So now you're ready to add together. Go ahead and add together and get your final answer. So 7b squared minus 4b squared would be 3b squared. This did not have a like term in the second group, so we're going to just bring that down. Negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. And that would be your final answer. The main thing to keep in mind is that when it is subtraction, you have to distribute the negative and then you add them together. So now for the second one, do we need to distribute a negative again? Is the second one subtraction? No, good. So we're just combining our like terms. I'm going to just rewrite all of these terms under its like term. So negative 2f squared, its like term, I'm going to put that here. And then the negative 3f will go here. And a positive 8 goes here. None of the signs changed. So now you're ready to add. Going straight down. So that would be a negative 4f squared. Because negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. What's negative 3 plus negative 3? And then what's negative 5 plus 8? Positive 3. And that would be your answer to the second one. All right, any questions about how we work through that? So yesterday we focused on adding and subtracting. Today is multiplication. Go to page 235 in your reveal book, page 235. Okay, so today we're going to focus on multiplication. And multiplication is just the distributive property. You multiply one thing at a time. Now we're not going to focus on the FOIL method because we're actually going to use what you're most familiar with. We're going to put it in a box instead. So you might need to take out a separate sheet of paper. But there's also some space off in the margin on the right side that you can probably show your work on. So let's go ahead and look at this first one, example 4. So we have one term, 2x, and we're going to multiply the 2x by everything inside of the parentheses. We're going to multiply it one by one. So we're going to start off by taking 2x times 4x cubed. What do you get when you multiply 2x times 4x cubed? So 2x times 4x cubed would be 8. So you're going to multiply the number. So 2 times 4 is 8. And then with your exponents, we're adding them.
Would it be 8 to the 4th?
So it would be 8x to the 4th. So go ahead and put an 8 right here. Now we're going to take that 2x and multiply it by 5x squared. So the second thing we're going to do is take 2x times 5x squared. When we take 2x times 5x squared, again, we're multiplying our numbers, so 2 times 5 is 10. X times x squared is x cubed. Now we're going to take that 2x and multiply it by the next term. So 2x times negative x. So the number in front of this x is a negative 1. So I'm taking 2 times negative 1, and that's why there's a minus sign right here. So this is a negative 2. And then you're adding your exponent, so x times x is x squared. And then your last is the 2x times negative 7. So 2x times negative 7. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14, and then we have x. So this will be your final answer. So you're doing one term at a time. See, it's just one thing on the outside. This term doesn't have a plus or a minus, so we don't need to make a box. All right, so now let's look at example 5. For example 5, we do need to make a box. Now they're doing the FOIL method. I'm going to do it a little differently, so I am going to take this off. So there are 3 things that we need to multiply. And the first step when there's more than 2 is to just pick any 2. So we didn't have to start off with these 2. You could have took 3a plus 5 times 4a plus 1, or a minus 7 times 4a plus 1. It doesn't matter which 2 you start with, but you have to start with only 2. So we're going to start off by multiplying these 2. So let's make a box. So find yourself some space in your margin, and we're going to organize it a little differently. So I do think working it in a box students tend to be a little bit more organized with their work. So go ahead and fill in all 4 squares. So you're taking 3a plus 5 and multiplying it by a minus 7. So in this first square, we have 3a times a, which will be what? What is 3a times a? 3a squared. And then we have 5 times a, which is positive 5a. And then we have 3a times negative 7. That would be negative 21a. And 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. So now we're ready to now we're ready to combine our like terms. So we only have one term that has an a squared, but we have 2 terms that have an a. So they're like terms. We can add the coefficient, which is the number in front, we can add them together. So negative 21a plus 5a is negative 16a. And then we have a negative 35. All right. So let's pause there for a second, and then we're ready to do another. So the first step is to pick any 2, make a box. And now we're going to make a second box. Now the second box we make is going to be a little bigger. Because this time, see how we're multiplying? So this is the answer that we got in step 1. So everybody notice, this is what we got in the first step. Now we have to take the answer we got and multiply it by the 4a plus 1. So I'm going to make a box, but how many do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, and then this one has 2. So I need to make a 3 by 2 box. So this second box needs to be a little longer. because we have 6 squares. So across the top, I'm going to put the answer that I got in step 1. And then that 4a plus 1 goes down the side. All right, so take about 60 seconds and fill in all 6 squares. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in our squares. So in this first square, we have 4a times 3a squared, and that's 12a cubed. And then we have 4a times negative 16a, so that should be negative 64a squared. Who had negative 64a squared? All right, good. Then we have 4a times negative 35, so that would be negative 170a. Who had that? Wait, oh, negative 140, I'm sorry. Negative 140a. Who had that? Negative 140a. Okay, good. Now the bottom row is easy because we're multiplying by 1. When you multiply by 1, the number doesn't change. So that's 3a squared, negative 16a, negative 35. So now we're ready to take out our terms one by one. We're going to start with the highest power. So the highest power is a to the third, so that would be 12a cubed. And another reason why I like using the box is because our like terms are usually on the diagonal. So these two terms are a squared, so we can add those together. So negative 64a squared plus 3a squared is negative 61. Who had negative 61? Okay, good. And then we also have two terms with an a to the first. So that would be these two. We can add these together. And that's negative 156a. And then the last one is negative 35. And that would be your final answer. All right, any questions about how we work through that example? So now we have a check at the bottom. It's our last question for today. You should have some space at the top of page 235 off to the right. You should have some lines. You can use that to show your work. But we're multiplying 3 things. So again, we're going to start by making our first box. In our first box, we're going to multiply these 2. So make a box. Multiply these 2 together. And then after we get our answer, we're going to make a second box. So you definitely don't want to rush through that, because if we get the first box wrong, then our second box is going to be wrong. So take a minute, fill in all 4 of your squares. So in our first square, we have negative 2r times 5r. That would be negative 10r squared. And then we have 5r times negative 3, so that's negative 15r. And then we have negative 2r times negative 1. So what's negative 2r times negative 1? Positive 2r. Good. And then we have a negative 1 times a negative 3, so that's a 3. So when we take this out, we have negative 10r squared. These are what we call like terms because they both have r to the first. So that would be negative 13r plus 3. So now we're going to make a second box. And in my second box, I'm multiplying the answer I got in step 1 by r plus 4. So the second box is going to be a little bit bigger. So let's make our second box a little longer. So we're going to have our 10r squared, our negative 13r, r plus 3. Then down the side, you have r plus 4. All right, take a second, fill in all 6 of your squares. So negative 10r squared times r, what would that give you when you multiply these together? Negative 10r squared times r. Negative 10r to the third, or negative 10r cubed. Good job. Then we have negative 13r times r. So that would be negative 13r squared. And then r times 3 is positive 3r. In our second row, we're multiplying this top row by 4. So negative 10r squared times 4 is negative 40r. Negative 13r times 4, let's see what's that, 26, negative 52. Negative 52r. And then 3 times 4 is 12. So now we're ready to take out our answers. Oh, wait a minute. What did I mess up? The negative who? Oh, the negative. That should have a square. Thank you so much, Jaden. That should have a square on it. Because it's negative 10r squared times 4. That's negative 40r squared. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So now we start off with our highest power, which is negative 10r cubed. And then we're going to add these together. These are my like terms. They both have r squared. So when you add those together, you should get negative 53r squared. And then we're going to add our 2r powers, r to the first. So 3r and negative 52r would be a negative 49r. And then lastly is that 12 that didn't have a like term. And that would be your final answer. Now, you don't have to make a box. There's a lot of different ways to multiply. I like to make the box because I feel like it makes the work organized. But you can also just use the distributive property like they showed you in Reveal, and you will still get the same answer. The main thing I'm going to look at is, did you get this answer? If you got this answer and you went about it a different way, that is okay. That is okay. So, did anyone get a different answer from this? Okay, I'll have to look at yours in a second to figure it out. Give me a second. If you did a different method, then it might take me a little longer, but I'll look at it. All right, so just a reminder, this is homework 24. This is the same homework that if you already took a picture yesterday, you don't need to take a picture again. It's the exact same homework assignment. You should have up through number through 11 already done. And if you use this time wisely, you can finish it and have it turned in before you leave, because you still got 15 minutes. The last 5 questions are multiplication. So use the time you have in class.